Hello, welcome to Feedback Friday. Hello, everyone. Hi, Diego. Hi, Paint Liquor. Hi, Guy in Spirit. Hi, everyone. Steve, everybody. Okay, so we got Frostblight here. Frostblight. It says, hey, Eric, wanted to get some feedback on my Skelly Boy if I can. Would have liked to do more with the base, but have entered him into Richard Gray's Bone Zone. Time constraints got the better of me. Thoughts on any improvements or adjustments to the model would be much appreciated. Thank you. All right, let's take a look. Let's open this guy. So let's take a look. So first impressions are quite good. I definitely get some Richard vibes from it. Yeah, it looks quite nice. I would say if one thing is sort of standing out to me, what do you guys think in terms of, is there, so I like the gold. The metallics are quite nice. Yeah. The reds are pretty good too. But if there was one thing that kind of blends together, what do you have any thoughts? Yeah, same for me. The skull could use a little more light, but for me the stone background and the armor are very similar, and they are causing a little bit to get lost with each other, especially since it's like this big thing. So it's having a really difficult time like silhouetting the figure here, right? Like this section here, right? It's tough to see sort of this silhouette. The red is fine, right? But all this gray here causes a little bit to get lost. So I think if it was me, I think what I would do is I would try and alter the stone a little bit. Paint Liquor, thanks for the prime. Appreciate you. I would also probably try and alter the color of it just a touch, maybe either making it cooler or something in order to distinguish it a little more. But I think something along these lines, like if we were to bring up the value of the stone a little, it might help to silhouette him against it a little bit more, right? You can bring this one up to, something instead of like this dark rock, maybe a little bit lighter on the lighter side. Something to just, help distinguish these two elements just a little bit more, all right? Will help him stand out a little. The goal here being, just to help separate. If we do this, and maybe it's not that much, but something enough to just, just separate these two, right? We're just trying to visually silhouette the Skelly Boy a little. As far as the actual painting on the armor and stuff, I don't have a lot of comments there. I think we could push the skull a little bit more. So instead of quite so dark, we could brighten the face up just in a few spots, just a little bit more. might help to give a little more visual interest to the face. I think you could do the same actually for the red on the helmet. So I think a lot of times I would recommend also simplifying sort of these shapes, like this top facing plane here. You can make much more solid because it is facing upwards, right? A lot of times these sorts of things get like, we think we have to overdo the like blending on some of these elements, and sometimes it's better to just simplify them. Like this is just a flat plane, right? So you can really simplify that shape, and it'll help to create like a bit more light on the upper area of the helmet. You can see just by like pushing the light on the skull head a little, pushing the light on those wings on his helmet, brings a little more attention upwards. Then I think the gold and stuff is quite good. The like metallics are quite nice, but this is another spot where I think you can. One thing I tend to like is to have a little bit broader highlights in some areas. I think sometimes with metallics, we have a tendency to make the like final highlight really small and try and like, so let's look here. And I'm gonna paint the shape. So if we look here, it's like 1, 2, 3, 4, right? And then sort of 5. It's very balanced. It's like a little too patterned, okay? So what I would say is taking something like this and like, maybe you don't need this dark reflection right here, right? And then maybe you take this lighter reflection, you spread this out just a little bit more. And you can create a little bit more imbalance in the shape, but it creates a much more natural and broad light to, again, it's like all about the focus here, right? So it's like just changing that much, removing that dark section there, creates that broader light. And yeah, yes, the steel has verdigris. I guess that doesn't make a ton of sense. Okay, then I would say probably want to add a couple little final reflections to some of these guys. Even sometimes you want to like place that highlight along the edge like this, like the inside edge. Yeah, these like nice broad highlights can create a little bit more focal areas. Okay. Thanks, Corum. Happy New Year to you too. Even with the helmet, right? Like the helmet here, we could create a little bit more simplified plane here just to show like, yeah, this is facing the light. He did it on that one, but here we can push that just a bit more. And I think with those couple things, right, distinguishing this, creating some more light up top, and then altering some of the metallics a little bit, we push the light where we want it to go. Okay? Dr. Flink and RV Calrissian. Hello. Welcome. Thanks for following. Welcome to the stream. Okay? Makes sense? Good. And Dr. Flake, thanks for the sub. Hello. Welcome, welcome. Thanks for the prime. Appreciate it. Cool, makes sense. I would even consider, I know you're going for like a rougher steel, but maybe having the light on the helmet, just maybe like one more step. Push that light just a tiny bit more, you know, on not everywhere, like just up there near the face, right? We're just focusing the light just a little bit more. Okay, it's a very small change, but it can make a big difference in where you draw the eye. Well, thank you, and Happy New Year to you too. All right. Let's see. Ursa Art. Feedback Friday is my favorite cartoon intro. What? I mean, thanks for the tier 1. Appreciate you. Okay, what else we got? All right. So we looked at this one last time. Let's look at Will's. And I'm gonna use, this one's not bad, but all right, this one's a good example. So let's look at this real quick. So he submitted this last week. So he's going for this like very cartoony kind of look, right? Even with the like cell shaded kind of thing. I think it's okay. We talked about how I thought the background was like a little too short. But what I want to talk about is like this style. All right. So I've seen this style done by a few people, this like cartoony, this sort of cartoony comic book kind of style. There is, well, one thing I'm going to say, it kind of drives, this is being pretty nitpicky, but it drives me nuts that the characters' bases do not match the scenery. His kind of does back here, but like his base doesn't match. Like, yeah, they don't the base like doesn't overlap into the scenery correctly, and it definitely gets under my skin a little bit. Now, I don't want to dig too much into composition and everything, but let's look at the figures and let's talk about like painting this cell shading style. Not line it up perfect, but like he's the one had snow and then he's standing in a part of the scene that has no snow. So, you know, perfect is... All right. So when you're doing this cell shading style, all right, black lines and clear shapes are the absolute most important thing you can do. Okay. The other thing is like this splotchy kind of finish is very important to not have. All right. One of the, and another thing I see constantly with this, people attempting this style, is line weight is super important. Like I could get into illustration and talking about line weight and how that affects things, but so black outlining is important, right? But we need solid color too. So like if I'm doing this cloak, I need this cloak, right? Whatever shape this is going to be, this needs to be like a clean, defined shape, all right? So this is an exercise in like this sort of style, right? Is an exercise in clean shapes and proper base coating. All right, so you need like this shape to come here. I mean, I did this style like on the Gundam, the RX-78, right? It's like everything is about like getting a very even layer, okay? Even if you're going to have like multiple bands of layers, you need even layers, okay? Then you need very clean dark lines like between elements, all right? So like here you have to come back and you have to clean up his hand. Here on his face, there can be no splotchiness, all right? And then clear distinction between different shapes. So it's like if I'm going to do his face in this sort of style, right? That's probably too bright. I mean, that's literally like white. So I would tone it back to probably something like this. Okay, you need it like this. Okay, so I'm just looking for the basic shapes here. And then the black lining is where it becomes important. So all right, so we have to outline around the shapes here. Even on, normally I wouldn't outline around his hair, but you have to like outline around his ear. You need to like outline in his ear because you're trying to represent like a cartoon, right? In a cartoon, they're going to draw these facial features on. And maybe you draw his eyebrows on. Maybe you literally draw his beard on. All right. But everything needs to have these like sharp outlines. It is not typical in a cartoon style to do cross-hatching highlights. Cross-hatching is done with shading, okay? So if we're talking about a like cartoony style and you wanted to shade that, let's say you wanted to do this like comic booky thing with his cape, you would do a big shape like this, all right? So you do some kind of big shape here to represent shadow, or here, right? If we wanted to do a big black shape here to represent shadow. And then, let me create something white real quick. We can use this is fine. Okay. So let's say we're doing, everyone knows what a sphere, we can just do a sphere, right? So we're going to do a cartoon hatched sphere, right? So let's say the bottom is in shadow, okay? All right. This is okay, but this doesn't really inform you of form that much. When you do cell shading, or it's not technically cell shading, but you're doing like hatching, okay? Hatching, right? You want to create the lines in the direction that the form is curving. Okay, so we're using the hatching to inform the direction of the curve. Like, I wouldn't do them this way because that's not the direction that the shadow is going. The lines go in the direction of the curve. All right. Let's say I was drawing like a bicep or something, like an arm. Okay. Tricep, elbow, whatever. All right, shoulder. Okay, something like this. Okay, we're gonna shade then the light's coming in from this direction. We shade this backside of the tricep. Maybe some of the bicep gets shadow like this. Right. Back of the arm is in shadow, and then there's all these muscles in the forearm. Okay. All right, so the bicep in this case curves this way, so we want the lines to go this way. This curves this way, right, because it's rounded that direction. But then it also has a shadow that goes this direction. So this is when you start, this is when the actual, this is just hatching when it goes in one direction. Then when you cross hatch, it's because there's a shape that's also going in the other direction, right? So yeah, his arm is a cylinder, but then also his bicep is going underneath, so the shadow goes down. And then you can start doing stuff like this where it's an intermediate shadow, and you might not have a pure shadow there, but you need to create some kind of shape or whatever, right? And depending on how, you'll see comic book artists do this kind of thing a lot, where they go like this. They create this little like saw shape, right? That little saw shape, you'll see them do it very small, where it's like this. And they'll do it like super fast. That little kind of saw shape thing, that's to show these like very tiny curves, okay? Yeah, they'll like do it like that or something. So yeah, you're trying to represent the direction that it curves over. This became a drawing tutorial, but basically with this sort of cartoony style of painting, that's, you're trying to represent this style of drawing with, what's it called? With miniatures, right? So don't do this. You do it with the darks instead. So like, let's say we're doing the rocks, right? Like you take and you, if the rock is curving this direction, you do the lines like this to show that the curve of the rock is going that way. But the bigger deal is just to make sure you get nice outlines, even on the beard, like, right? You could do like little black lines. You can do little lines to represent the hairline. But everything needs to be sharp. Crisp. Needs to be crisp and outline. Then you can start playing with line weight, that like certain lines, right? So on the cape, they should go, the hatching should go this direction because this is the direction the curve, it's perpendicular to the curve, right? And then if you have something that's got like a compound curve or multiple curve directions, you can create more. But then when you're talking about line weight, I don't know how much I can show line weight here. Like you've done it some here where you have like a thicker line here. But what is this like white? What is this outline trying to represent? Like should maybe the black outline on this blue section should be thicker than the one on the white section, because this one's representing the separation between the snow and the ground, and this one's representing this. So when objects separate, as opposed to using it as like, yeah, you do smaller, normally borders have a stronger line weight, and you can get really specific into this, but normally borders have a stronger line weight, and details have a lighter line weight. Would you ever use cross-hatching? Yeah, you would. It just depends on what you're painting. It's all about like the direction. Let's look at someone who's really good at it. For example, like let's look at Jim Lee, X-Men, black and white. Okay. So like look at Wolverine's arms, right? Like he uses the lines on the biceps, the hatching, to represent the direction. Okay. Yeah, so, and you can also see the use of line weight here, like pretty well. Okay, like parts in the light tend to also have lighter line weight, where parts in the shadow tend to have a bit heavier line weight. But then also like, yeah, outlines tend to be lined heavier, so you can see all the like lines in the stonework and stuff in the background is a much lighter line weight than parts in the foreground. I know Thundercat. Yeah. Anyways, so what I'm trying to get at is that, yeah, you can see the cross hatching here, right? There's those squiggles on his serratus muscles, those like. Okay, so, and on his neck, you can see the little ones that show a very small curve, where these like more big swooping lines create the larger curves. And then you have large areas of black. But, yep. Okay, so all that is to talk about these shape, like this sort of style a lot. And that I don't think I don't know how many people really nail this. I saw some. I remember one guy. I don't remember who it was. Someone did one of the Hellboy miniatures, like from the miniature. I think Mantic made it or something. Somebody did one of the Hellboy miniatures, and it was like pretty legit. Like they did a pretty good job representing Mike Mignola's style. But yeah. So lights are in shapes, right? And then shadows are with ink. It's supposed to be like black ink work, all right? So if you want to study this style, don't look at other miniature painters who do it. Look at comic book art. Like, look at Mike Mignola's art and try and copy the work of try and emulate the work of Mike Mignola instead of emulating the work of a miniature painter who's emulating Mike Mignola, because then you're emulating an emulator and it becomes a mess. Go to the source, the source material. You know what I mean? All right. Sure. Did he upload more pics? I don't think so. Okay. Hi Eric, I'd like your feedback on this whip. Some parts are not done yet. Right arm with scythe, head, crow, a few details here and there, some completely black. Mostly looking for small changes that could push it a bit further and to know if I'm on the right way. Also, advice on how to paint the mane, as I stopped mid-session because it didn't look right. White line on the cork is for main angle. Okay. Was wondering about the base ambient temple ruins with blood red fallen leaves. So, oh god, option A or option B? What's the difference? One's going one way, one's going the other. Actually, that's a good question. I feel like. So this is a good question for you guys. Let's save them both so we can draw it. Okay. Well, let's look. Let's look at these two. Option A. How do I just put a photo in? No, not share it. I want to add a photo, insert a photo. Option B. All right. So we've got option A, option B. So this is option A. Okay. Everyone's saying B. Interesting. B leads the eye back to the figure. B because the gap, the head. Okay. Okay. This is, and then this is B. Yeah, I would say B. I don't know how to put them side by side. I would have to make the canvas bigger and then put them side by side. I don't know how to do that in this. I don't know how to do that in this program. So this one or this one. So let's draw on top of this one real quick. So what is this? What does the line do on this one, you know? So if we look at the line here, think A-frame's the better. I think this one has a better compositional line. So here we go up this and kind of around and around. And go up and up like this. And then A goes like this and then kind of goes nowhere. Hello. So for me, this one works better than this one. Assuming you're looking at it this way, but he's standing around, who knows? These figures are posing constantly. Like every figure that's like standing on a cliff, like, you know, like whatever, dude. They're doing fantasy hero poses or villain poses, like whatever. Like, why is this horse up on a dais anyways? You know? Doesn't matter. Yeah, dude, they just pose all day instead of fighting. Hello, Nacho. How are you? Thanks for the raid. Welcome in. Hope everyone's doing well. Okay, so for me, this way works. This one works better than this one. Hola, ¿qué tal? Hola a todos. Feliz año nuevo. Mira Mortal, thanks for the prime. Welcome in. All right, now we can talk about the painting real quick. Oops. What am I doing? Where am I going? Sí, hablo español un poco. Mi vocabulario es muy limitado. Mucho de mi vocabulario es sobre pintura. I know the maldices. Yes, I know the curse words also. Maybe I need to read. No, I don't. All right, let's look at a horse. It's pretty good. This is one of those things where it's like, yeah, I kind of need to know where it's going. Also, really hard to talk about painting the mane when I can't see it, because it's on the other side of the horse. I mean, for me, this is going well. Like, the lighting seems to be rendered quite well. I like the colors of the horse. I think you might need to be careful when it comes to color choices, because you got a lot going on here. This is going to depend a lot on how you decide to render certain elements, because you've got this really strong red, but then you have this kind of like right now, the horse I feel works pretty well. Like this works okay, but this feels like completely different. Thanks. Yeah, I probably would have liked to seen this a little further along. But I think like the technique rendering wise is quite good. But I would just keep going, you know? Like I like how the horse fur is rendered and everything. It's going to come down a lot to how you balance these elements, right? Like, how do you balance how much of this color is used throughout? Like, is this color going to get reused up here, right? Like, how much more of this red is going to get used? Like, there's this very strong red. So how much more of that are you going to implement, you know? And in terms of painting the horse hair, I've talked about painting hair a lot. Like, you can look here. Look at this. Like, look at the light reflecting off the hair here, right? You can see the, like, zigzags, okay? See how it goes like this, and then it comes back down, and it goes back up, and then it comes back down. So you want to try and render it that way, and don't try and like edge highlight every little individual strand. It's better to create a more natural flow to the hair, you know, and sometimes that means crossing over from one strand to the other. Okay. And yeah, this is just a warning. Like, be aware how much of this bright red you use, because right now, like, what is our color palette? It's like teal. It's this sort of teal blue, right? Red. And then this kind of like green yellow. It's really like a desaturated yellowy kind of color, like this. And then kind of like a brown orange. So, and then also kind of a purpley gray. It's like a blue gray. Would the red work through wait, what? Would the red work good though if he went with like dark desaturated green dead moss on the base, too, on the rocks? I mean, this green, like these colors, this is why I don't love talking about color palettes and giving too much feedback on these sorts of things until you have more of like the rest of the context, right? Because yes, this color palette can work together, but it depends on how you balance it with the rest of the piece, right? Like right now, I have basically none of the actual like focus of the figure painted at the moment. Like none of this, like the black is painted, but he doesn't have his head, or the scythe isn't painted, right? If there's more like orangey reds and rusty colors in here, that are pulling from some of these colors. Like up here, that could help. Depending on how you render him and like what color his eyes going to be, right? You can make these work. I would even like, and then if it doesn't, you know, maybe you change this from like a red and we play more in like the oranges, you know? So like maybe this, if you're finding that this red is too intense, like maybe these become like a orange later, and then that ends up working better because the orange is like a little more natural, and then you can even play with like some yellow green into it, right? Like you start adding like a bit of yellow. Like there are ways to play with this and make it work. But right now, because everything is like very compartmentalized, it's really difficult to tell if it's all going to work together when it's done. Could it work? It could all work. It just depends on how it's balanced at the end, you know? This is why I recommend getting some color onto each element so you can see if they're working together. Because if you spend 3 hours painting a shield and then find that, oh, this color wood is not really working with this other thing, like you just spent 3 hours painting a shield separately and then you didn't check it with the rest of the model, you know? Hi, Eric. Would love to hear your thoughts on my latest project. Okay. I don't have 16,000 unread emails. I have 3,000 unread emails. Okay. Oh, that mail? This is, I don't even know what this is. I don't even know what those emails are. But that's some old mail app. I use Gmail now. Yeah, that's because that mail app hasn't updated in forever. I used to get emails that are like, they would just be like server reports and stuff. It would like send it would just send like status updates constantly, and it's like if I don't get an email that says like it's down, like I'm not going to read the status update on some server. Or like 9,000 social emails. It's like Facebook's like, someone left a comment on your post. And it's like, yeah, dude, I know. Because the notification on the Facebook app also tells me that. I think this is pretty cool. I think the base needs some work. This needs to be blended in a little better. Like either hide this or finish it out or whatever, I don't know. But yeah, there's it looks a little unfinished. Especially since you've got the like sanded top where it's like just been, or like the saw marks where it's been cut. So I would work on that a little. One thing I would say, okay, so the sword, right? You got the metallic here. Put the light near the head. Okay. We don't want to draw the attention away. We want to draw the attention towards. Like, let's look at the difference between these two, right? So, this or this? Okay. These you probably want, like I get you're going for like the pink thing here in the ears. Probably want a little more outline of the like hair going around the ear. So this frames a little better like this. You can also put some like fur growing into the like this part of the ear a little bit. Outline the mouth structure a little more. I feel like you're missing a little. I don't know if do bunnies they have pink noses, right? Give him some, you know, don't be afraid to throw a little pink in here. Okay. But yeah, you need to work on the facial structure a little bit, like the details on the facial structure in order to make these really like stand out so you can see some of the shape to this stuff. The actual armor is quite nice. I like but you could try and outline a couple of these things a little heavier, just so they're a little more clear. Like the belt, for example, needs some kind of outlining to help it read. It looks like you didn't paint the belt buckle. Like a dark line around this element, right, will help it stand out more. You did one kind of down here, but should have one sort of going around the top too. Okay. It's just going to help define these shapes better. What are you guys afraid of black lining? What's going on? Okay. So something like that. Because I like the color palette and stuff going on. That's pretty cool. I don't really understand this purple reflection here. I think it should probably be more of a green if it's like reflecting his cape. Like, I get you're trying to do like purple shadows, but like the actual sword's metallic, so it's probably gonna shift more towards green there because that's what it's reflecting. Like you put green here, you put green here from the ground, probably put a little more. Yeah, I see you using the purple maybe this gets a little green. Help create a little shape. Okay. Even like if you're going to include some green, right? Like, why not? Like, you could include some green right on the underside of this thing, you know? But yeah, I think it's nice. Like, the focus is pretty good. I think we can maybe still push some light. Maybe not. This light's quite good, honestly. This could be a little brighter and a little more saturated, I think. Remember these elements are facing upwards, right? So like if they're facing upwards, they should be in this plane should be in the light, you know? So like don't be afraid to just put that plane in the light. Okay, right? Right? I would check rabbits. They might not have white claws. I don't know. Rabbit. White. Rabbit. Claw. Bunnies. No, yeah, they have white. They have white claws. I know some animals have black, so that's why I was curious. One thing I always have to check. But yeah, so face needs more detail. I would work on the reflections a little bit, and then outlining needs some dark lines. Okay. How long we got? An hour? All right. Okay, give me a minute. All right, I'll be right back. I'm going to go smoke real fast, charge the pencil, and then we will look at some more. So, be back in a few minutes. We're going to a crab dreadnought. Hi, Eric. I'd love some feedback on this piece that I completed this year. It was my first all-out competition piece, and I'd love to know how I could elevate in your opinion and what elements you think might be holding it back. Hope you have a great Christmas. Well, let's look at the pictures. That's fun. Oh, I like the little freehand. I like a little crab guy. I love little finding little elements. I think the basing is pretty nice. So let's look at it overall. Conversion is cool. Everyone loves a giant enemy crab. All right, there's one thing that bothers me immediately. From a storytelling element, can you guys find it? Thinks not. Storytelling perspective, okay? Let's look at the model, all right? Let's look at them. Think about this model, all right? So no, everything's not too clean. Lots of barnacles and stuff growing on him. Some weathering on him. Yeah, there we go. Daniel got it. Why are the claws the things that would get the probably some of the most wear from, clawing things, have no weathering on them? They're perfectly clean. Them claws need some wear, dude. So that's the thing. I don't know specifically how, but they need some weathering. I like the weathering overall. I think it's quite nice. I like the barnacles and stuff. Are all pretty good. I think the base, and I've talked about this before, especially with rocks, like this can get really tough because you've got a lot of stuff going on in the base, and it can be pretty difficult sometimes to think about this in a way that, so let's take something like this, right? This is very dark. We want to try and give like some actual like shape and step to the rocks, okay? So like we need to think about like what's elevated, what's like facing up towards the light a little more, so that we can give like a bit more form to the rocks, so that there's like some more general shape here, right? Like let these steps show that they're steps. Because if everything is like super contrasty like this, you don't have like a good understanding that there's like like as much dimension and form. Like the sides of the rocks should be darker, the tops of the rocks should be a bit lighter, so this way we can see that there's like this verticality to the rocks, So like look at the difference between this, where everything kind of just becomes the same, and this. Right now we have like elevation and steps to the rocks, right? You get too focused on edges and details, and you lose the overall shape that you would have through like creating this tiered elements, As far as like the wear and stuff, I think that's all pretty good. I think the colors work pretty well together, like the barnacles growing and the weird coral on the back, I think work all right. I like the decals. One thing you can do with your resin, guys, when you're doing resin pours, I see it all the time where it's like super clear. You can actually mix like a little bit of like ink into your resin pours and like add like a tint to it, so it can create like a little more depth there through like you add like a little color to the resin, and it'll give the water some tone, right? So it could be like all of like a drop or two just to like tint the resin pour just a little bit in order to make it like the difference between that and this, like it'd probably be more like, you know, something like this, right? It's like shifting all the color slightly more green to show the like that this isn't like perfectly clear water, you know. There's algae in it or whatever. But yeah, and then adding some things to the claws. And I think overall, yeah, I mean it's quite sharp. Quite sharp and pretty clean. Clean in like a clean is in like precise, you know, not clean as in like, oh, it's like perfectly, because obviously he's covered in streaky, grimy mess. I think from a conversion standpoint, one thing I would have considered doing, this is a very small thing, right? But the like this motif here, this is from like a conversion standpoint, right? These spikes, yeah, because these legs in the upper dreadnought do not come from the same kit. Okay. So this spike motif, these like pyramidal spikes, do they show up anywhere else? No, he's more of like rivets, right? Rivets is much more of a motif on the actual dreadnought. So I would have personally like sanded these off. I would have cut them. I would have cut them off and sanded them flat. It's such a small little thing to say like, oh, these, you know, it's like this is not part of this design aesthetic to a dreadnought, you know. So like let's look at they're up on the halo, I guess, but like it's a very small thing to say like, should these be on there? And those are like when you're doing conversions and kit bashes, like those are the little details that can make like a big difference in making these work together better. Like the kits work more similarly, you know. To play devil's advocate, crab legs do often have spikes. Sure, but then what I would have done is then added some spikes to like his arms too, you know? Like if you're going to do that, then add them to the arms also. But anyways, yeah, it's cool. I like it. Hey Eric, just a fun display piece. What would my next steps look uh, look for refining? What? Anything strike you as odd or needing an overhaul? Birch, pretty nice. I don't mind the smaller base on this. I think it looks smaller because of the angle the photo is taken at also. So I don't mind. I don't mind the smaller base on this that much. Um, okay, there's a couple things that stand out pretty immediately to me. The first thing is the leather. Okay, so I've talked about this quite a bit on streams and stuff before, but like too much, dude. This is it's like you're overdoing contrast here, where it's like you're trying to push the contrast so much. What we want to do is we want to think like this does not need to go from this dark like to all the way up to like this, okay? This is like basically pure white, all right? So you have a darker material here, right? Maybe this is enough, you know? Like it's not metallic, right? Use the shadows, right, to create these forms. It's just overdoing it, you know? Like why is unless it's supposed to like I don't think it's supposed to be. It's supposed to be just like a leather trim or whatever. The mini painting subreddit is going oh yeah, wow. No, not every surface is metallic, exactly. And then here we've got some like really dark elements, like your midtones, you need midtones, right? Like if this is leather, like we don't need this. Yes, you want the black outlining, right? But you need to come in and sometimes like if your black lines get too thick, right? Like this goes from just like shadow to like extreme highlight, like immediately. Like look at these two next to each other. These are not similar in the slightest, right? So we need to create some shape to this stuff. Just overdoing it, you know? Needs midtones. Right, and then like here on the belt, it's like I can't read the difference between the belt and the skin when they're the same like that. So yes, this is like you can see that I've simplified this. Now I can take this and like add some more light to it and make it you know, something along these lines or whatever. And I want to create the shape of the upper arm, like follow this cylindrical shape here. Whatever it is. And you can even push it more yellow or something if you want, you know? But, like, we have to create the shape first, create midtones, and then you can start to add more light and contrast to it. But even still, like, we have to get the initial light and shadow first, right? So this now has shape, and there's like a cylindrical shape to the wristbands, right? And we have form to them. And now if you look at the difference, right? Like this doesn't really have any shape to it. Doesn't have any, like you don't see that roundedness, and then it's just all edge highlights, right? This has form to it, okay? Okay. And the same could be said for these elements, right? Like use the edge highlights and stuff on these details to pull these parts out. But don't add so much dang white to where you can't even like see the color of the, like it becomes metallic. Like that's not what we want. We want it to read as leather, you know? Some of the light on the face is a little bit odd. I think I would have tried to, based on the shoulder, I think probably some light a little bit on the face there. Right. Basing this on the shoulder and the ear having light, you know? Oops, whatever. All right. I think that makes sense. It's maybe slightly too dark under here in some of these areas. Also, like, it's not bad. But yeah, maybe, and then this could be the picture also, but maybe that should have been like slightly lighter on the underside. Like some of these shadows might be a little dark also. Okay. I like the spots. Those are really cool. Yeah, like the edge highlights on the scabbard, right? It's just like too pink. It's almost looking Tron-esque, you know? It's like, don't edge highlight too bright, right? Like a lot of the values in the fur and stuff feel quite natural. A lot of the values in the skin feel quite natural, and then it gets to the leather parts and it's just like boom, extreme, you know? So, and yeah, they could be way cleaner. Looks like some of the hair could be quite a bit cleaner also. Okay. Hi, Eric, looking for general feedback. First time me asking for feedback on my miniatures. Added 2 more high-res photos below. Okay. This looks quite good. It's got a little spaghetti hair, but skin in general looks quite nice. Some rough patches that need to be cleaned up. Like there's some rough blending areas, but I think in general, like I think the light's pretty good. I think we probably have some opportunities to add a little more shadow in a couple areas to bring out some these micro volumes like a little bit more. You know, you got some skin folds, dude. It's not that weird. People have wrinkles, right? Like the belly button should be pretty shadowed. This is fine. This is fine. Now, it's Procreate. This is one of the spots that's actually weird. So we have the shape here where like all of the highlights, right, seem to be pretty well placed on spots, right? They're like very central to the volume, right? What happened with this leg? So everything is quite central, and then you get to this leg, and it's like here, right? Where it should be like here. Okay. Let me fix this. Put that back in. All right, so yeah, this is weird. So we got to fix this leg. So the light should be much more like this. With the highlight being more like in the middle here. And I think we could push maybe some highlight in a couple spots a little more. This arm probably needs to go down in value a little bit. Something more like one of these tones, because this is kind of facing away. And then if we have this sort of shadow over here, right? This side of her arm would probably be much more shadowed. Okay, because we're trying to make it match to this shape, right? So like this part of her side of her arm should match the curvature of the other places, right? Probably want to push the light here a little bit more. Okay. It's small stuff, but just trying to be consistent with the lighting, right? Now this, I don't know if this is a painted cast shadow or what, but if it is, then there probably would be like a cast shadow like that. You would have a cast shadow of her, probably her thigh. Assume because there's a cast shadow here, and I guess there's one going across the face. So yeah, you probably have some cast shadow work, and then darken some of this. So yeah, cool. So the big one I see is the leg, but then yeah, you just need to take in, push some of that stuff some more, right? And we're really looking for these areas where this like main highlight is going to be like super, super shiny. Cool. But yeah, mostly I would reevaluate this arm and this leg. The back looks good. Yeah, back's good for being nice and just soft. Strong. Ursor. Hello, Eric. Finished the online workshop bust and learned quite a lot from it. I'm glad. I really appreciate the time and energy you and Bora invested into this. Would love to get some general feedback on what to push even further. Thank you for in advance. Okay. Not bad. Not bad. I think you followed along pretty well. I think I think mostly overall it's quite nice. I think what I'm lacking is just some shadows, you know? Some like nice strong shadows in some areas like would add a lot of depth to this. So right now, like in terms of dark values on the skin, like this is kind of the darkest we have. So let's push that just like a little bit more. All right. So let's assume the light is coming in basically from above, but we can tone some of these areas down even a little bit further, right? We just want to create a little bit stronger definition in the face, okay? Now, one thing for me is I would generally like to see a little more overall, like, this feels very, like one-dimensional or two-dimensional to me because we don't have like a super, clear, like main or like lighting direction. We get some shadow, like there's no real like, it's tough on this figure because you don't have like a ton of ways to express like the exact lighting direction other than his face. But based on like some of this area being darker, I'm going to assume that like a little bit more of this side of his face is a little bit heavier in shadow. Okay. So even just like creating some more shape to the, like the eye here, maybe shadowing this part of the eye a little, this like eye a little bit more, maybe the whole side of this nose a little bit more, create some shadow from the beard and mustache. Right, this is a little heavier shadow, and then we can create some little shadow shapes on his brow. Right. We create a more clear like direction to the light, you know? Even grabbing something like a little bit more pinky colors and shadowing this a little bit further. You know, a lot of what I just did might look really subtle, but these subtle changes to the face can give like a little more overall shape and expression to the look, right? So let's look at before and after, right? Before, after, right? There's more like depth. Oh, I skipped people? My bad. I'll go back. Okay, there's a little more depth to the shape, right? We show the overall form of the face a bit more. Blue Lobster 492. Hello, welcome. Other parts, yeah, I quite like. Yeah, it's good. I could also use some more shadow in the hair. But in general, I think it's quite nice. Okay. Which ones did I skip? I did skip some. My bad. Liam. Eric, hope you had a good Christmas. Would love some general feedback. Okay. All right, chat, what am I going to say? What's Eric going to say? I like the color scheme. It's pretty good. What's the problem with this figure? Come on, you guys. Yeah, Gary. There you go. All right. Why? But why black lining, right? It needs black lining, but why? Why does it need black lining? What's the problem? The problem is that we don't get a clear read on like where these different shapes and sections of the armor like break apart. So we don't see like the hand separated. We don't see the shoulder separated, right? We don't see this little waist armor separated from the like the hip armor. Okay? Like we need to create separation so that like the silhouette, because right now when you zoom out, like you don't really, these elements, these individual elements all kind of start to blend into one sort of blob of green, right? So by using some dark lining, okay, we're gonna, this lets you know that this panel is like a separate panel on top of the other panel, that these like, these move individually, you know? So like he can now, before, this is all one big thing. He can't bend his waist, you know? He can't like bend over at the waist. We put a dark line there. Now you can see like, oh, this is a separate piece and this thing articulates and he can like, those pieces, they slide on top of each other, right? They're two separate armor panels that can shift and move on top of each other, right? This thing in here, we create some shadow in here. Now his shoulder moves, you know? At the elbow here, this thing's separate. This thing, we create shadows on these parts, right? Now his elbow moves. His wrist, right? Separating his hand and all his little fingies. Right? These are all now elements that like shift and slide over top of each other, and they can like his hand and individual fingers now move. So we're creating these really dark occlusion shadows between individual plates of armor, and now they can, it makes you see that like, oh, these things like slide and move around. Right? This thing's nice and dark under here. Okay, these are two separate pieces. his head is like in this helmet, you know? His chainsaw. All right, let's look at the difference. Look what this does to like making the figure read. Right, yeah? It like breaks up these components and becomes much more articulated, you know? Elsewise, I mean, it's pretty good, you know? I don't have too much to say about the overall painting of this. Maybe could have used a little bit of highlight on his face, you know? Is there such a thing as too much panel lining? Yes, there is. When you have parts that, like, you don't want, like, you don't want to paint around these black, right? Like, these are not separate because this is not a separate panel. It's like a extrusion, right? Like, you don't black line around these. You don't black line over top of these. Like, they're not separate pieces, right? What you use it for, like black lining, panel lining in this case, right, is to separate elements that are like, they are separate things, right? We're trying to create that dark shadow that like shows where those things are over, like these are two separate pieces overlaying on top of each other, right? Like if I take my hand and do this, you know, here, let me put it on this camera, right? I got my fingers, you know, there's not two darker lines. They're basically, it's all one solid thing until I like shift one forward, right? Because now it's like overlaying over top of it. You get that darker line. Like here, like this, when I overlay this, right, there's a dark shadow that separates my hand because the hand, especially if I lift, as soon as I lift it off slightly, it becomes even more obvious, right? So it's like I overlay these, I lift this slightly. Now there's this really dark shadow in between them. It shows that like these two things can like slide over top of each other. Could you achieve that as well by doing a small cast shadow within the armpit area of the minute? Yeah, you can. Can I use a darker version of the color rather than black, or should it most always? You just want to use something very dark. Like I say black lining, it's dark lining, right? Like you just want it to be a very dark value to show that there's something like really deep under there, right? Like you can see when I go like this that it's like that's basically black in there, right? But if I touch, then it's not really black anymore. Make sense? Good. Okie dokie. Hey Eric, this is my entry for Squidmar Open. Wanted to get your feedback so I can do at least a round of refinement before submitting. I tried to go whole ass on this one. Always go whole ass. I specifically focused on value separation and value hierarchy. Color, shadow color for the hair is lighter than that. Yep. Okay, hopefully I did it right. Yep. So let's look. Oh, look, they included a black and white for us. Pretty good. Nice value separation between elements. All right. The hair is clearly lighter than the skin, which is clearly lighter than the leather. Okay. So things have nice value separation. I like to see it. Okay. Like, pretty good. Now, that being said, there's a close-up of the face. That being said, it's now a little flat. All right. So good value hierarchy, but there's a little lack of contrast now. All right. So what I would say, let's just duplicate the layer. All right. Something maybe more like this would make it a little more interesting. So we still have that hierarchy, but now, you know, now we have some, there's a little more contrast to the piece, right? So this is okay, but you could like definitely push more. Here again, black lining, guys. Like you got a black, like this is what I'm talking about with black lining. Like this, these little ropes, they go into these grommets. Did you know that's the name for these things? Right? These this tie, they're overlapping, right? These are two separate things that are going over top of each other. So you have to create the separation between them to show that that's like, this is a rope going in the hole, you know? And these two things, they like, this is overlaying over top of another thing. This sucks, by the way. Not your painting, but like doing this, like this level of black lining sucks. It's not particularly fun, right? Like these things are separate. Okay, but it's going to create those shadows that really show that these things weave over top of each other and create that definition we want. Yeah, it's not fun, but it helps a lot, right? Like, what's going on here? We got a belt that's overlaying the skin. We gotta get some of these dark shadows in here, right? You know, you got a jacket that's going all the way down and it's overlaying her skin, so it should separate at the skin. Should have done it darker. Like we need them, like these are kind of okay right here, but we gotta like really create separation where we can. especially since you're already on a material that's very dark, right? Like this is when you got to say like, okay, well, the only way to go darker is to use an even darker line. So I got to use black or something. Then I could say like, okay, we do that, right? I think the face, we want to adjust the light on the face just a little bit. I would like to see these highlights like a little softer and a little brighter on her face. The jawline is maybe a little dark compared to the chest, right? Something like that. This goes up and over here, right? Whatever. Yeah, something like that. And then using these darker shadows create some definition sort of around that. Some nice definition in the mouth. This sort of little shape here. Okay. So yeah, pushing that light, like you should see that light, right? Changes the shape of the face a little bit. The shadows are a little rough, or a little too much on the face there. It's a little brighter. It's brighter on the actual. Okay. And then, so you have light, shadow, and then you have specular light. Okay. So specular light is not, and when we're talking about the reflectivity of objects, specular light is not part of that. Like you have value relativity when you're talking about materials, right? So it's like darker materials, the lights are going to be the same amount, but then depending on how glossy an object is, so like if this leather is very glossy, right? Maybe the darker leather is glossier than this brown shirt, but maybe the actual specular highlights will be quite small and shiny on this. You know, think about latex or whatever that's almost all black, like it's super black, but then the actual shines on it are like close to pure white because of how like ridiculously glossy it is. So it's like these are a separate thing that live on top of the surface, and those you can go much brighter on. But they have, depending on how glossy the material is, they need to be smaller and more intense, right? So the shinier an object is, right? In terms of relative value, let's look at two black objects real quick. Right? Oh, even this is interesting because here you've got a GW base, right? Like the way this little central section is polished, you can see that the center of it is glossier than the other section, right? So when I catch the light right, the middle of it is the same, but when I turn it like this, it's the same black, right? So like roughly same value scale, roughly same, but then like bam, the middle of it is shinier than the other parts. Okay, where on this side, right, this is very rough. And then if we take something like glass, like black glass, for example, right? Got my little Halloween candle here. Look how shiny so this looks like the level of black is the same, it's still black, but the actual, like, the shine on it is much higher because it's a glossier surface. So the relative value of light and shadow stays the same, but the actual specular highlight is much higher. I hope that makes sense. Okay. By the way, I saw a video the other day with you doing a bust and used some water on the bust to show the viewers a bit of how you can find where the highlight would be. That was such a crazy cool tip. Okay. Now, the thing to remember though is the position of the light and your position does matter a lot when you do that little the damp water trick. Pop secret. No, not Pop Secret. That was you. Richard P. Hi, Eric. I painted this figure, who you are probably familiar with. Yes, I'm quite familiar with this figure. As it turned out to be one of my personal best, I decided to enter it into the Cult of Paint competition. First time entering a competition. I didn't get any medal, but seeing the winners, I can see why. Could you give me feedback on what to focus on next so I can get to that medal level of painting? Well, oof. The medal level in what competition and and where, you know. I can tell you what to do. I don't promise any specific color of medals. Okay, so this is pretty nice. This model, however, is very busy. This model is super, super busy, okay? There's a lot going on, all right? Tons and tons of detail on this guy. Okay, I've painted this model, so I'm a little familiar with it, all right? When you are painting something like this, okay, anytime you're painting a model along these lines where there's so much going on, okay, the most effective thing you can do is you need to simplify. All right, what do I mean by that? Okay, let's look at the knees, for example. How do we simplify the knees? Okay, we have a shape here, right? We have a shape here, okay? We have a triangle here, 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 right? Ignoring all this other crap that's on top, all these little lines and details, we have to simplify the shape first, the basic geometry, all right? Same with the arm. You've got the arm, right? Okay, you have the arm. You've got all these little lines and all these edges and details and whatever, right? But if we simplify the shape into basically a like a bent cylinder, right? A creased cylinder, we take and combine this thing from 9 million shapes to two pretty basic ones, okay? It gets harder with certain parts, like the wolf head, okay? Much more difficult. But this thing, right? Simplify that shape, you know? Okay, so you could simplify this thing down into basically like it's a cone like this, right? It's this sort of shape here that we then make cutouts of, you know? Right? So simplifying the forms will make it much easier to understand the shapes and much easier to render when you're working on some of these metallics, right? So let's do the vambrace, for example, All right, the vambrace. Okay, so what do we got? We got a cube, right? Okay, well, where's the light? Yeah, well, the light's probably going to be like this. Okay, so if we think about this as one big shape, the light's going to go down the arm like that. All right. Let's make this like something like, I need to be able to see where the shadows are though. Okay, we could do something like this. So, all right, so we could simplify this. We push the light a little more. Okay. Then we need to add some shadows, so the back side of it's going to be a bit darker. All right. Okay. Now we push, now we need that central light. Yeah. Can you guys see where I'm going with this? Okay, so we simplify the shape. Now we can come back and add these like dark shadows in between. All right, so now we have to come back and now we can start to like define the details, right? So it's like we need this dark lining that separates these little individual shapes on top, because these are like plates overlaid on top of each other. And then we can come back and use like the white edges. And we could start to add like noise and complexity to it, right? Okay, so, right? So by simplifying the shape, right, we get the overall two sides of it much more defined. Then we can start to like make it more complex. And you get a much more like readable shape overall. Okay? So always, now this is probably too shiny or too like bright for the kind of metal that you're going for. So what I would probably do is then like I would darken this down to get it back to the like level of gray black that you're going for. Sort of dark steel. Right. But now that arm, okay, now if we look at the arm, it's much more, the overall form is much more readable. Okay. I'm curious, do you ever plan part of your work with Procreate? No. Or not as much just because of all the experience. Yeah, it's just experience thing. I just know. I don't always know exactly what I'm going to do, but I find my way. No, so no, I don't tend to. The only thing I'll sometimes test in Procreate is like if I'm going to do like a freehand design or something, I will occasionally draw out the freehand in Procreate to see if I like the design. Like if I want to draw a tattoo or something on a character, sometimes I'll do it in Procreate first. Just because I'm not super confident in like, I'm not a tattoo artist, right? And I don't think a lot of tattoo artists would even just like, you know, not many tattoo artists would even just like freehand a design on someone. So they're going to sketch it out first. So things like that I will, but normally, no, most of the painting I do not. All right. I hope that helps simplify. Like up here, right? There's too much going on. We got to separate, like just real quick, I'm going to show. Okay. So like up here on the shoulder, right? We need to keep these elements that are all facing upwards, right? All these elements sort of face up. And then these other elements, right? Some of these face towards the viewer. So we want these to be shinier, right? These to be brighter, the stuff that's facing up. And then we could even darken down some of the parts that aren't. Right. We help create separation between those top planes and those bottom ones so that it's more clear. These overall shapes are more clear. Here. We got like 5 more to do. All right. I'm going to do another quick break and then we'll finish with these 5. Okay? So I will be right back. Give me a couple minutes and we will finish up. Hello, I'm back. Let's see where we're at. Double knife. Hello, Eric. I'm having fun with Trench Crusade models. I'm used to Space Marines, and these are slightly smaller, but I think it's just something to get used to. I'd love to know what you think, and as always, be as harsh as you want. Okay. I'm going to be so harsh. First, I think your photo is a little blown out. I think it's okay. All right. Oh, you guys don't want me to be that harsh. There's a difference between harsh and mean also. So first of all, black lining. We want to create separation. Like these vents on his face. Separate materials. Okay. Now, let me ask you guys something. What's his chest piece made out of? What's this made out of? What's this made out of? What's this made out of? Bronze, brass, probably. Bronze or brass, something like that. Okay. What's this? What's this? You didn't paint the belt buckle. Okay, so what's the problem? The problem is that the undershirt and the metallic are the exact same. They're like the same tones, all right? And that's creating the problem of we can't distinguish the materials from each other. So if you're going to do like a silver eagle here, we want this, whatever it is, we want this to be separated. It's not quite the same value. Like the brass definitely has like a higher value range, but we can change the tonality. Okay, so what we're going to do is we're going to make this a color layer. All right, and instead of this like gold sort of color here, let's maybe shift it slightly more brown. All right. Okay, that's one thing. Now let's take the shirt, which is like this sort of khaki yellow, but let's shift it even more slightly greenish. It's still yellow, right? We're still in yellow. But now it starts to like read like a green. And then it's probably, we need to desaturate it some. So we're going to reduce the saturation on this to maybe something like this. And then we can do the same thing, but now we're going to darken it. Okay. So now we create some sort of distinction between the two, right? Like just by shifting the colors slightly, we're able to separate those two materials out. Let's do the same for the wood, or not the wood, but the leather, right? So let's grab a nice dark brown leathery color. Let's darken this like canvas or leather or whatever pouches things. We're going to tone this stuff back. Okay. So we're creating separation here. It's too white. Okay, so the goal is to create readability. I don't know if the cape is supposed to be red or pink or what. It's very pink at the moment. I would also probably darken parts of the cape down. All right. So, create distinction between elements this way. So, if we look at everything we've done, let's duplicate this layer. We can turn it on and off. Like, the readability of elements goes way up, right? I actually don't even think the blue really works here. Let's go back to the color layer and let's make his pants like a almost gray khaki. Something like this maybe. Sort of green gray. Because the blue doesn't really work with like the red and the kind of greenish yellow so much. And then we could push the lights on them a little bit more to make them like a kind of white khaki. I don't know, something like that. But yeah. So, anyways, the goal is to create separation and distinction between these elements, all right? Readability. Okay, cool. All right. Eric, hoping to get some feedback on this one. I think I'm at the refining stage, so before going any further, would love your view on readability and overall look. I think it's a cool Hugo bust. Oh, we're going to look at that for sure. All right. Okay. Pretty cool little work, man, huh? Let's look at the values. We haven't done it yet this stream, so you know. What do we think? ignoring kind of the armor because the armor is metallic and sort of weird. What do you think about overall shape to the face? What do we think about our value split? Are we getting good, like, clear, like, shape to the head? Like, does this read as a dome? Can we kind of see, like, what's in light and what's in shadow? Maybe, maybe not. So what I would say is that we probably want to bring up some light in places. Like we probably want to tone down some of the shadows a little bit. And first try and make like the overall shape of the head a little bit more, like the lighting direction a little more clear. Okay? So let's try and separate some light and shadow a little bit more. All right, so more of this side is in light. That means more of this is in light. So the right side of his face is in light, the left side of his face is in shadow. Okay, so there's adding some light, right? We start to create more light on the one side. And now we got these really deep shadows here, but we don't have so much deep shadows on the other side, right? So let's darken down and try and make just go with black. All right, so we're trying to find the form here. So we can say that like this half of his face is in shadow. Now, if we look at the values, after darkening this like this, right? Oop. Okay, so we separate the values here between light and shadow. This value is too bright. Okay. And I don't have to do it that much. I can tone it back a little bit, but okay, let's look at this value. Okay, it's like this gray, right? This gray compared to this gray. They're the same, right? Let me put a new layer so I can show you. These are the same, right? This value over here is the same as this value over here. It's the same as this value down here. But the left side of his face is supposed to be brighter, yeah? So what that means is that this is still a little too dark over here. Okay, you're getting lost in where highlights go, but you didn't get the overall form of the head clear to create the strong value separation of the lighting direction. All right. So if we look with new lights and shadows, right? Now you look at everything. Now, like before you look at it, everything sort of feels the same, right? Now when you look at it, there's like a clear like lit side of his face and a clear shadow side of his face. Okay? Does that make sense, guys? Then once you're done with that, you can start going in and adding more, like you can add deeper shadows and stuff, right? You can come in and start to add like these even deeper occlusion shadows and start to add like micro volumes and stuff to the face. But you got to get this like main light correct first before you start going in and adding these like smaller details, you know? Like even the teeth need shape to them. Okay. So we get that main light. Now we can, let's turn off. We can see the colors now, right? Okay, we can see like what adding light and shadow does here. All right, this falls further into this like simplifying, okay? Now, then we're gonna do this edge light, rim light, luce de borde, the whatever you want to call it, okay? And this is another light that goes on top, all right? So when you're doing an edge light, it has to go on the edge. But it's a soft light. It's a second light that comes around. All right. So it's affecting this side plane of his face. Okay, something like that. But what does that look like from the side, you know? Like, that's all fine and dandy when you see it like this. But what does this look like from the side view, you know? We so often see it from the front view like that. We don't ever see it from the side view. But what that means is from the side view... Hello, Alfie. Hi. Okay. What that means from the side view is that means that this light is coming in from the back like this, right? And that means that like, let me delete this. Okay, that means the light's coming in from the back, so where most of this light's going to hit is actually like back here. And then it's going to like slowly weaken as it comes around towards the front, right? So it's not just affecting this, it's affecting the whole side of his face. And there's gradients and stuff in this. But then when this gets foreshortened from the main view, right? What happens is you turn the model, this gets foreshortened, and this light that's like a soft light like this, as you rotate it, it foreshortens. You guys know what foreshortening means? It's like when I take a bottle like this that's long and sideways, as I turn it, it becomes thinner, right? It foreshortens. Okay. As you spin the model, then that large plane on the side gets that big gradient and side plane gets shrunk down into this thin line, and you end up with this edge line on the side. Okay. ¿Me entiendes? Hip hop frogs. Hi. Until recently, most of my painting has been for the purposes of gaming, so this is the first model I've poured a lot of time into and pushed myself as far as I can go. But obviously, it's far from perfect. I've gotten some great advice from others already, but it never hurts for some more. Okay. I mean, it's not bad. How I think you can push this further. One is just going to be like painting smaller, you know, like it's just going to come from, you know, further brush control, like this stuff here, right? Mark it in red, right? So some of this stuff here could be, you know, thinner and more like sharper. There's a lot of areas that could just be sharper, like there's not enough going on the boots. It's a lot of little holes and stuff that could have like finer edges. Some of this highlighting and lines are like they're a little chunky, right? Gotta create like more definition in some of these spots. And yeah, some of your like shadow lines are getting kind of thick in areas. So one of it is just like painting thinner, right? Thinner, more controlled, more defined. That's a big one. The other is shapes, right? Like I know I talk about shapes a lot, but everything we do is painting shapes. Yeah. So what is this shape? It's a cylinder, right? His gauntlet is a cylinder. Hello, Tommy, do it. Okay, that means the light will go this way, right? They go like that. And which way is it going right now? The light is at the top and bottom. So this light here, dang it, should run this like this, which is behind that thing. But that's okay because there's still space in there, you know? Like there is room in here to create light right up next to the little fly emblem. Okay? And that little fly emblem will become sharper and more defined when you put this light right up next to the shadow of the next part. And then you can darken down some of this and create thinner line work here. And this will become more rounded as you go. Okay, so we're trying to create shapes. Same with this. There'll be more light on this. You're also losing some mid-tone, I feel like. You're kind of like, what's happened to the helmet? I don't see the like edge of the helmet anymore. You're just jumping from black to like super bright pale yellow. We need something in between. Okay, we need more of these midtones here to help create some of this separation. Then you can soften it out or whatever. Use this blue or whatnot if you want. Okay. The next thing, you're using this like yellowish green here, right? See this is like yellow, this sort of nasty yellow color. All right. Why don't we use this in the skin? Why don't we use, where's that, in here? We can create more interesting skin tones and give him more weird sickliness by using some of the same highlight colors in the skin, right? So we can reuse some, we can go back to some of the highlight tones that we use elsewhere to create some harmony between the highlights, and we create more color variation in other parts of the model. Like, so we create this like sickly green sort of highlight to his skin tone instead of just pinks, you know? The thing with highlights, when you're doing highlights, you're mixing, right? You're mixing the mid-tone. Typically, it's the mid-tone that really tells us what color something is, right? And you have to have, that's why you have to have those mid-tones in here, right? These half-tones, lights that tell us what color this thing is, right? Like, using the halftones is what it's like. Okay, the skin is pink. I can use whatever the heck color I want. I can use like deep purple in the skin, in the shadows if I want. But as long as I have that, I'm not saying to do this, like this is just me throwing this out as an example, but I can use purple in here. And it still works because majority of the skin is still this like pinkish tone, right? Heck, I can use like a deep cyan blue as a shadow color if I wanted, and your brain would just be like, yeah, okay, that's sure. Why not? Right? Because it's like really in the like deep shadows. So like it's so small that you just like, yeah, sure, still reads as pink, even though this shadow is now, these shadows are like deep blue, right? Look, I can use like this as a shadow color, and it still won't matter, right? Like I can put like pure blue here. It's about the values, right? First the values and then the halftones. The halftone color is what makes it work. And then like I'm just doing this as an example to show you guys, but I can slap like pure blue around in the deepest shadow areas, and your brain will still read the colors correctly because majority of the colors are like the halftone, which is what tells us what color the material is. Okay. I'm not saying take blue. Because again, I'm not saying do this. I'm just showing it as an example. You could do it with literally any like dark color. I could do it with like dark magenta, like super saturated dark magenta if I wanted, and it would still function. All right. Makes sense? So play around, and then, yeah, just like I've talked about with some other folks, like certain elements. Right, like this leather. Don't make that leather too bright, you know? We want that to be like that line across the chest there to be readable. And then like, yeah, you want some dark to separate this, but you need some light there in order to be readable. When you're doing something like this, push some a little bit of light right up next to that next shape so you can kind of see the separation there. Okay. Got it. Swedish minis painter. Hi Eric, been working on this for a month and I'm finally at a place where I'm happy enough with it to hopefully get some feedback from you. As you can see, the model in the background is not started yet, but I'd like some feedback on the composition of the models as well, if you have any. I'm not sure. I mean, I think it's okay. I guess my question would be like, what's the main view? Is this the main view? Is this the main view? It's definitely not that. Is it something in between these two? This is always tough when you have the square plinths because you want to, like, your brain naturally wants to line up the facing with yourself. So, like, if you have a plinth this way, your natural inclination is to like hold it with the flat side towards you. So people I think are naturally going to think this is the main view, where if your intention is it to be this, I'm not so sure that this works. Maybe this would have worked better with like a circular plinth. Right now, because she's black, it feels very heavily weighted towards the front. Maybe they could also be like slightly close. I feel like there's a bit of a big empty space between them. So I would probably consider like moving them slightly closer together. All right, let's look at the painting of it. So I'm guessing this is the main view. Uh, some of the parts feel a little rough and sketchy. I like the overall shapes you've rendered. Like, it seems like you've done a pretty good job simplifying the metallic down. But I think there could definitely be some like sharper. Let me save this one. Just to look at it. I feel like there could be I don't like this. I feel like there could be some darker line work here to separate these a little more. Once again, we have to think about like how this armor moves, how this person moves in this armor. Like, is this a separate plate from this and from this? And is this a separate plate so that she can like bend at the waist, or is it all one big breastplate? These are all separated. Okay, this is the thing, real quick. So I'm just going to talk about it. Don't do this. Okay, it looks messy instead of looking like a reflection. So if you really thought about it, like this is not at an angle to reflect her hair. Okay, this is like this is facing forward and slightly upwards. This is now facing like forward and downwards, so it wouldn't reflect the hair, right? So those reflections don't really make sense. You like keep the, it's better to have the definition between the two than try and like do fancy stuff by like having it reflect the hair. All right. Now this is okay where it's like it's reflecting the inside of the cape, but I don't get like any of this brighter red reflecting. So like this red maybe sort of makes sense. All right, and then the next thing here is that we need some dark. Yeah. It's just going to make everything sharper and more readable, all right? Like, it's weird fantasy armor, but we've got to create some like overlapping elements. Then you can start to create some darker shapes like this. Right, push that contrast on these elements a little more. Create some depth here. Sam, thanks for the prime. Appreciate it. Okay, so we want to create like depth, and some of these like these parts to the metal, they need some like deeper shadows. Okay. Things are overlapping. We got to have some dark parts. All right. All right, you guys afraid to use black now? What's going on? What's going on, chat? What happened where you're afraid to use blacks? Huh? Did I say something? Was it me? Did I Was it something I said? Anyways, I'm not gonna sit here and go around and do all of that, but that's the idea, right? We gotta create some contrast, okay? Create some contrast is what makes things look metal, all right? And without some contrast, it doesn't quite look as metal as it could. Okay, so pushing that definition. It doesn't mean everywhere, but you know, some elements, like we gotta have some separation. I've noticed a sort of ongoing reluctance to hit the full value spectrum because it is harsh. Yeah, so I know that's what I was kind of wondering, because I know I've said like, hey, you've got to create like value hierarchy, but when I talk about like value hierarchy and material separation and like not overdoing the contrast, I'm talking about between light and shadows, but that doesn't include dark lining and highlights, right? So you have light and shadow here, and then you have occlusion shadows and specular highlights, and they're on the outside. They can go into that extreme value range. But the light and shadow section, right? That's where you have to have that careful balance. Otherwise, everything can become overly contrasted. But when you're dealing with like the dark lining and the specular highlights, that's when you can really start to like push the value contrast. Anyways, so yeah, those are my thoughts. DOMs. Okay. More crab. Angular crab. What's the saying? Something given enough time, all of animals will evolve into crab. This dwarf is in the next stage. He's almost there. Oh, I like it so far. It is a little, I just noticed the kind of Aquaman vibes, huh? The orange and green. Couple little thing here. This pink's not really working for me just because it's a little too pinky, yeah, for the kind of colors we got going on. Maybe let's just like dull it down or try and shift it a little bit. It's a little too bright magenta for the color palette. So you could kind of shift it a little bit to maybe make it fit a little more. But well, you got to paint his eyes. But I think this is going pretty well, honestly. I like the texture on the crab claw. I think that looks very nice. I think here, this is where we were talking about kind of material separation and values. Here, we probably, if this is he's got a crab hat, you know? Like we want to try and separate this a little more, clean this up. Like really make this kind of sharp. Right, I can see you're doing a little cast shadow work, so don't be afraid to like bring these shadows out a little more. Right, if you're gonna have the shadows like on his forehead, that's fine, but like put them on his forehead, you know. I think this is all pretty nice. You could bring this light up just a little bit. That's his jaw back here is maybe getting a little separated. But I like the face quite a bit. Maybe push the light a little higher up onto his forehead. Like you go a little higher to make the cast shadow a little more clear up here. Probably the underside of the nose needs a little more shadow work. Yeah, this is nice. So this is, I wouldn't use this color for this. I would go probably with like a warmer sort of, or like tea, like you have very warm shadows in your piece. Like this is very warm. Even though the green is not super green, it doesn't go to like a cold green. It's like, you can see it's even like getting into the reds, right? So it's not a super cold green. This is kind of cold, but it's getting so close to black. So I would go for the snail instead of this like cold gray. I would go with like a warmer gray for the shadows. So it would be more like a slightly orangish gray shadow. Or shrimp or whatever it is. I don't know what the heck kind of animal this is, but yeah, I would go for a more warmer gray. Because you have a sort of warm ambience throughout. This is very shiny right now, but I assume that's just the paint. I just didn't notice he has a fish belt. An eel belt. Yeah, man, I think it's going pretty well. The crab, like I said, the crab claw is quite nice. I would try and bring over this light a little bit more here. Like, try and bring this light around a little bit more on the shell. Like, the shell is very naturally rendered, which is really cool, but it's lacking a little bit of the, like, lighting that I would expect from the rest of the figure, so you probably have to push some of these elements a little more so we can get the lighting matched up. The green a little bit more on his higher on his shoulders, or not the green, the orange. And yeah, there's just some blending stuff to do. Yeah, I think this is pretty cool, man. For the beard, some of the lines here are a little dark. right? So you don't want these dark, okay? So what I would do is I would come back and probably like base coat around the hair here. Like you shouldn't have dark lines here, all right? It should be this should be all the like lighter section of his beard that is connecting, like growing out of the skin. So you'd have lighter hairs there. It'll make the connection with the actual skin feel more natural. And obviously got to paint the eyebrows and stuff, but yeah, man, it's cool. I would just say keep going on it, but yeah, I correct those couple things, like just try and create nice separation in certain elements, create that get that shadow around the head, try and readjust some of the volumetric light on the crab. I would just adjust the spiral crustacean, whatever it is. Is it a nautilus? And then I think the green needs some work. Like, is this a highlight? Is this a painted highlight? If it is, it's a little blue. I would shift more towards a warmer green, because your orange shifts towards yellow, your skin shifts towards yellow. So yeah, the green should probably also shift slightly yellow. Like it should shift more towards like a warm green as you go. Even that little bit of difference is like a warmer. It's like it doesn't have to be like super warm green or even super bright, but like shifting it. Okay, it's shiny from the inks. Yeah. So when you add some lights and highlights and stuff to the green section, I would definitely add some like more slightly more warm limey greens to it to try and yeah, create that nice yellowish color that all your lights are sort of shifting to. Okay. Even on the eels or whatever, you can shift these warm too, right? Like these are very cold right now. So you can shift those slightly warm also. So like using like a greenish or whatever. A greenish highlight will be more in line with the kind of color, the sort of colors you got going on. Okay. All right. Well, I hope that was helpful. I believe that was all of them. So thank you guys for hanging out. Let's see who we can rain.